Welcome to Understanding the Bible with Pastor Stephen. This is episode 41, Creation Part 4, The Origin of Life. Last time we had talked about some of the falsehoods about creation, the myths, the gap theory, which is completely unsupported by Scripture. It was a 6-day literal creation. The Big Bang theory and the problems with it, that it doesn't answer where all the matter in the universe came from. It just says it was always there and exploded. So it fails to answer what caused the explosion, and it can't scientifically explain the origins of life. So the Big Bang could have happened if God spoke and it appeared as a bang in the universe as everything suddenly appeared. So it could have appeared as an explosion, and that's the way God might have done it. I don't know. It could have been completely peaceful, and 1 minute nothing's there, and then the next minute everything was there. But today we're going to discuss the origins of life from a scientific view, and that's going to bring up evolution, okay? Because that's the current fake science of the day. Now, obviously, I believe God is the creator and the origin of life. But to explain it from an evolutionary scientific viewpoint, bear with me, okay? Here we go. If the Big Bang actually happened, so the odds of all the elements from the periodic table coalescing into one mass and becoming the planet Earth is astronomical. Then on top of that, the odds that that particular mass is the precise distance from the sun that is needed to sustain life is just, it's impossible for that to have happened. But assuming the universe, the solar system, and the Earth happened through the evolutionary Big Bang theory, now we have to look at what is needed on the Earth for life to happen. So to discuss the origins of life, we look at what scientists say the primordial soup was, which was water, dirt, chemicals, and the occasional lightning strike to introduce energy, where they say somehow over millions of years, a single living cell was formed, okay? And then from that came the different organisms, and then plant life, and then animals, and then humans evolved from that. So human beings have studied carbon-based life forms on this planet, plants, animals, and humans for a long time. And so we do have an idea of what is needed for a single cell to live. So with the proteins, sugars, enzymes, RNA, DNA, the cell wall itself, all somehow coming together at the same time and location and somehow being jump-started to make it start moving and working together as a living cell, that's almost impossible, or that is impossible. Okay, we'll get into some of that. But what you have to know is that this idea of the origin of life and how the cell then began to split and make more. And then all of a sudden the whole planet is teeming with a variety of life over millions of years of variations and crossbreeding and dying and figuring out new mutations that work and whatever. It's just insane. Okay. But on top of that, with zero missing links found in the fossil record, every fossil found is fully developed, a complete species, instead of millions of variations from one species of all the different mutations and extra arms or extra fins or the fin with a finger on it, or, all of those things would have fossilized over millions of years with millions of variations of each thing. And of course, not a single variation has been found. Everything is fully formed and functional, right? So let's get into the origins of life as to what science says. So from the U.S. National Science Foundation, Georgia Tech professor Nicholas Hudd, here's what he says, quote, "We are working to uncover how molecules similar to RNA and DNA first appeared on Earth around 4 billion years ago. A few years ago, we proposed a theory that small, simple molecules acted as templates for the production of the first RNA-like molecules. Many of these small molecules, or molecular midwives, would have worked together to produce RNA by spontaneously mixing and assembling with the chemical building blocks of RNA." End quote. So there is this common consensus among scientists, and I use the term loosely, but understanding that science is supposed to be the evidence of the five senses and empirical data, right? Which this is all made up malarkey. But this is what you face everywhere in the world today, in academia, in the news media. I mean, heck, even at my job flying airplanes, people would randomly mention evolution and this kind of stuff. It would just come up in conversation. And, oh, yeah, that's a fact. And if you don't believe it, if you believe in a God or a religion or creation or anything different, they laugh at you as if you're a fool. So this is a very common idea that somehow molecules began to form and begin to, quote, work together like molecular midwives to form more complex things. And yet somehow it's spontaneous mixing in this primordial soup that just happens to have exactly what is needed. Okay. Now, the problems with this origin of life, and the reason I'm talking about this is because we're talking about creation, right? The idea that God created everything, and people laugh at it and say, well, no, obviously that's a fable. That's people use religion to get power over other people. And so they had to make this up so you would worship this God. And so they say without God, obviously evolution happened. The earth has been around for 4 billion years. It used to be millions, but now it's billions because millions didn't give them enough time to come up with stuff. It's retarded. It really is. But you have to understand that the science behind this stuff, there's two parts to it. There's the science that explains things like, hey, we need RNA to create viable cells, right? Of course, they don't explain how the RNA is actually alive and how the cells move and stuff. It's just, that's what's needed. So we do have the science part of it, right? But then you have the faith part of it, which is what I want to get into here. And that's why I'm bringing this up is when someone who says they believe the science, who says they believe in evolution because it's been proven, when you can show them and have a long conversation with them and show them that it's not actually science, it's pure faith. And then they use scientific words to make you believe it. If people have the knowledge and they truly want to seek after truth, they can see that evolution is actually anti-science. It's very unscientific. So here's why. Let me give you some of the problems. So first of all, the fossil record is missing the links between all the species. That's why they call it a missing link. They've never found one. There is zero evidence of Darwinian theory, gradual changes over time to new species. Zero. 100% zero. There is no evidence. I'm telling you, every single fossil that they've found that is a missing link, like Neanderthal man and all this other stuff, has actually been found out to be faked. They lied. It's not real. It's not there. So there's still missing links. We have no links between the species. Got it? The fossil record would prove with millions of each kind of species that they gradually changed. And yet we don't have any of that anywhere in the world. All right. Number two, random variation has never been observed to create a new complexity. Never has any biological species change been observed. Now, I did a series on the difference between macro and micro evolution. Macro evolution is changing from one species to another. Dinosaurs became birds or came from birds, or whales became bears, and all this freaking nonsense. None of that has ever been observed. So science is supposed to be observable and repeatable, right? But zero observation. No scientist has ever been able to create that change in a lab. There has never been any random variation observed. It's not science. In a laboratory, we can't even make it happen with divine intervention. Scientists in a lab actually injecting things into eggs and trying to force things to happen. Even with an intelligent designer, a human being, we can't make it happen. Never have we been able to create in a lab any sort of change between species. Dogs stay dogs, bacteria stays bacteria, birds stay birds, plants stay plants. Never once have we been able to produce it. So there's your testable part of it. Again, evolution is not science. It's not repeatable. There's zero evidence for it in the fossil record. There is no laboratory evidence to prove it. So they came up with abiogenesis, the idea that spontaneous life came from non-life given the right circumstances and millions of years. Now, this has actually been disproven. In carefully controlled lab environments, we cannot get life to survive for more than like a nanosecond from non-life. And when I say that, I heard once about they had potentially created some sort of molecule or something that moved for literally like 2 nanoseconds or something when they injected it with electricity. Like, it was really an insane experiment. And that's why I say we can't get it to sustain itself, because I don't want someone to argue that we had that one time that they were able to get life, from non-life for 2 nanoseconds. But even if we could get it, it would prove that there was an outside intelligent creator that put those things together and made it happen, right? So it would not prove evolution. It would prove that there was an intelligent designer. Now, there's lots of theories that kick the can down the road, like panspermia, where they don't actually answer the question of how life began. They just say, well, it came from somewhere else. So panspermia is the idea that life was seeded from outer space. Like an asteroid came that had living cells on it, crashed into the ocean, and they spread, and then life evolved on Earth from that, right? So that does not answer the question of what is the origin of life? How did it happen? It just kicks it off to another universe. Like, okay, it didn't happen on Earth. It happened somewhere else, so we don't care. Now, the main hypothesis today about the origin of life is the RNA world hypothesis. RNA molecules acted as both carriers of DNA and catalysts to more complex life. In a chemical soup mixed with lightning and millions of years, eventually life, of course, must have happened, because here we are. And that's it. That's the essence of their science, is they throw out a wild hypothesis without any evidence and then don't back it up with any evidence. And then all they say is, well, we're here, aren't we? So therefore it happened. Correlation is not causation, okay? Now, what we do know about studying science in plants and humans and animals is what is needed for life in a cell. And I don't know, I'm not a scientist. I don't know all of this. Okay. I've just studied some of this stuff. Is basically 3 or 4 different things: amino acids, sugars. You need glucose, ribose, which is very unstable, nucleic acids, uracil, unstable lipids, things like that. I think I said that wrong, but you need these things. Okay. Amino acids, sugars, and nucleic acids. Now, the conditions needed to make amino acids, nitrogen, do not allow for sugars to form. So within a chemical soup, the sugars need nitrogen, can't have nitrogen. And so you can't have the sugars needed for life and the amino acids together, because it's impossible. They can't form. Okay. Now, calcium, magnesium help form lipids that you need, but will not allow the amino acids to form. So coming up with or crafting a chemical soup that makes one of these things needed for a living cell will not allow the others to form. So therefore, the basic building blocks of a cell can't be put together at the same location. So all the things needed to make a living cell have to be formed separately in completely different scenarios, and then magically transported together instantly so that they don't break apart as they travel. That's just, this goes so far into the insane, improbable, unscientific nonsense that it blows my mind that scientists and teachers in school will teach this stuff. Now, I'm not even getting into the right-handed versus the left hands of amino acids, which I had to study that to figure that out. But basically, there's 2 of every amino acids, and they call them right and left-handed. And then the sugars are the same way. And all of this stuff causes problems and compounds the complexity of what is needed. So let me just break it down to this. One of the simplest microbes requires about 480 proteins all working together just to survive. So I went to the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science.org, PNAS.org, which is a peer-reviewed journal of the National Academy of Sciences, okay? And I found one of the smallest microbes. There was a study and a paper done on it that I read. It's called the Mycoplasma genitalium. This is a quote from their website, this Mycoplasma genitalium has the smallest genome of any organism that can be grown in pure culture. It has a minimal metabolism and little genomic redundancy. Consequently, its genome is expected to be a close approximation to the minimal set of genes needed to sustain bacterial life. So we're going to work with this one for a second here, and I want you to listen to this carefully to understand the problems with this scientific idea of evolution and the origin of life being created on Earth here. Basically, it's impossible for this simplest microbe with 480 proteins to have been put together by chance. The odds are so astronomical as for it to be statistically impossible or non-scientific. In fact, the odds are so crazy that it has to be miraculous. Some supernatural being has to have made it happen. That's the scientific estimate of this, okay? It requires a genius creator outside of the universe for the simplest microbe. Now, here's why. Each of the 480 proteins is comprised of a chain of amino acids. There are about 20 different amino acids on the Earth that combine over and over again in very specific combinations to form what we call polypeptides that string together to form a protein. So 482 of these different polypeptide proteins form the simplest microbes, okay? For example, the polypeptides in the human body, the largest one is called titin, T-I-T-I-N, and it has over 27,000 amino acids chained together to form it. All right, so we're talking about one polypeptide in the human body has 27,000 amino acids. All right, now we're thinking of the odds of these forming by chance just floating out in the ocean, right? So back to the microbe. Let's discuss what it takes. Instead of forming a huge amino acid chain like 27,000, we're just going to discuss what it takes to form a very small protein of 150 amino acids in the correct order. By taking the 20 different amino acids and figuring out the random combinations needed to get them together in the right order to form this simple protein of only 150 amino acid chains, the odds are 1 in 10 to the power of 195 that you could randomly combine them to get the protein. Now, this is without even the enzymes needed to connect the amino acids together. So we're just talking about the possibility of this one simple protein being formed. So let's just assume that evolution magically produces these where they're needed. They all slip together, and now you have to come up with 481 other proteins, completely different, that are much bigger, just to get the smallest microbe to say that you have life. Now, think about this for a second. The odds, 10 to the power of 195. The estimated number of electrons in the entire universe, all the galaxies that we have discovered with the Hubble telescope. A statistician put this together and came up with the estimated number of electrons. You know, the things that whirl around the proton, the nucleus of an atom, in the entire universe. The number of estimated electrons is 10 to the 80th power. The odds of one single protein forming of the 482 proteins that are needed is 1 in 10 to the 195th. This is beyond science, guys. This is pure fantasy, magic, if you will. Now, Sir Fred Hoyle, he died in 2001. He was an English astronomer who formulated the theory of stellar nucleosynthesis, the creation of chemical elements by nuclear fusion in the stars. He did not believe in God, And he studied this and could not reconcile the impossibility of life evolving with science. So he's the one who came up with the idea of panspermia, that life just landed here from outer space, because there is no way for it to scientifically evolve. There is no way to create life from non-life. It is a miracle. It is statistically impossible. So he studied this data, and he stated that the probability of one of these single proteins forming via evolution, the 1 in 10 to the 195th power, he stated it like this, quote, "One protein forming by natural processes is like a room the size of our solar system, filled with blind people, each with their own Rubik's Cube all messed up, fiddling around with them all at the same time, all blind, and all of them in the entire solar system solving the cube, the Rubik's Cube, at exactly the same moment in time." That's one protein forming, and you need 482 to form one of the smallest microbes. It's impossible, guys. The origin of life is impossible to have evolved. The solution: no man or scientific method can prove how life came about. Nobody was there. We can't prove it. So we have to either take magic, this scientific idea of it evolving in a primordial soup. You either have to, by faith, accept magic and call it science, or by faith accept the Bible, that there's not magic, that there's actually a God that created it. So either God lied or he told the truth in the Bible. God is the origin of life, guys. Genesis 2:7, "And the Lord God formed man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." So here's the summary, guys, on the origins of life. Scientifically, there is zero probability that it happened by chance or evolution. Life, cells, the building blocks of all life, proteins, enzymes, amino acids, sugars, had to either be somehow planted here on Earth by some other method, not evolution, either aliens or something else. And that still begs the question, well, where did that life come from? Or it was put here by an intelligent being in complete species form, like God said in the Bible. Now, the only scientific answer to the question, how did life begin, or how did life come from non-life, is that there is something outside of our solar system that put life here. And then you have to ask, where did that being come from? Where did that life come from? Well, something else put that life there, because we know scientifically it could not have come from non-life. It could not have just somehow randomly mixed and come about. That is scientifically impossible. So something else had to put that life there. Well, what put that thing there? Where did that come from? Where did that first cell come from? Where did that first thing come from? All the way back to the very first life, the first cause requires a designer to somehow supernaturally put it there, because it is scientifically impossible for it to have come spontaneously, randomly from non-life. So where did he or it, this supernatural being, come from? It had to be something that had no previous cause, something that had no beginning, something that did not have anyone else put it there, something that just is, that always was. That by definition is a God. Scientifically, God is the only possible answer for the origin of life. There must be a first cause for life, and that first cause is God. There is no other answer, not even scientifically. So the Bible is true, guys. Now, I wanted to read Genesis 1:1 to you guys, but I'm out of time. I'm just going to read a couple of verses here. Genesis 1:1. "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." And it goes on to tell you the 6 days of creation. And it gets to the end, and God said, "Let us make man in our image," verse 26, "after our likeness, and let them," and there, we're talking about the Trinity there, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, okay? "And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him." Not the image of apes. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And this is why we are different than animals, guys. God gave us dominion to subdue the animals in the earth. It is ours for us. We are not animals. We are created in the image of God. We are mankind. Verse 29, And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. And yes, initially Adam and Eve were vegetarians, okay? Verse 30, And to every beast of the field, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. The solution to the origins of life is in the beginning, God. I hope that you've enjoyed science. I hope you've enjoyed what I've been talking about today. And if you want to hear more, if you have specific questions, email me at angrypatriot42@yahoo.com. Until next time, may God bless you all. Guys, I don't know if you can tell, but I really love science. Okay. It's been one of my favorite subjects since I was a kid. And I really like digging into this to prove scientifically, like actual science with the Bible. And it's really cool because what a lot of people don't realize is that science does not back up evolution. And I've done other podcasts about this in the past, and I'll probably do more in the future. But science is empirical data, evidence, proof, things that you can see with the five senses, right? The hearing, and now I got to think about what's on my face, my eyeballs, right? Seeing, your smell, your sense of taste, touch, right? And so these are things that science has always been. It is understanding the world that God created, knowing that God created it to work in a certain way. And because he made it, he gave us scientific laws, physics, the universe, the way it works, that we can actually understand it because it's not random. I mean, if you think about it, if the earth was random, if it was evolution, there is no way that we would ever have scientific laws because everything would be random. And what works one time wouldn't work the next time. You know, what caused things to have babies wouldn't cause things to have babies next time because of a new mutation. Like nothing would work all the time. There would be no laws. Even gravity. You know, how does gravity work? And the fact that it's a mass concentrated together creates the feeling of weight. And well, why wouldn't that change as we're spinning through space? If we truly were exploded out from a central location, then how on earth do our orbits of the planets and stuff not get further and further away from the sun or closer and closer to the sun? If it's an elliptical orbit, when we reach the end, you'd think we would actually sling further out than before. Like everything would change constantly because it would be random and it would be chaos. But that's not the way God designed it. And that's why science works. So that's why I revert back to science all the time, is because it's not the science of man. It's the science of God that frequently disproves what man likes to call science. And that goes back to that verse in Titus, I think, where it says, do not believe those who talk about science, which is falsely so called. And I'll Google that verse real quick for you because that's just freaking amazing. Okay, here we go. So this is the verse. It is 1 Timothy, not Titus. 1 Timothy 6:20. O Timothy, keep that which is committed to thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings, and oppositions of science falsely so called, which some for professing have erred, concerning the faith. Even back in the first century, science was trying to tell Timothy that he was wrong on certain things about the Bible. And some professing Christians erred, meaning they followed the science and they failed in their faith because science was falsely being used. Means they were not using evidence. They were not using facts. They were not using proof. They were not using truth, actual scientific methods. They were coming up with their hypothesis, like the primordial soup that gave an origin of some new cell, somehow randomly evolutionary. And they were using that stuff and then slapping the label of science on it and then having a scientist proclaim it to be true. That's faith, guys. And then when you pay someone to tell you it, it's propaganda. It's false science. The Bible's full of cool stuff. Science is pretty cool too, because true science comes from God. Thanks for listening, guys. God bless you.